What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Today we are going to be looking at a very strange opening that is kind of trending among the beginners and intermediate level players, but I guess it is something that even advanced players can try just to avoid tons of theory. Anyways, we are going to be looking at the so-called cow opening as popularized by the one and only Anna Cramling and also inspired by Eric Rosen, by the way. So I want to spice up some things and probably make this defense interesting to you guys. So again, this is something that you can play against every opening, but you need to be very careful with your move order in the opening stage. So we're going to look at these four lines, beginning with pawn to e4, d4, then pawn to c4, and finally what to do against pawn to f4. So after white plays pawn to e4, for example, you shouldn't think of resigning yet. Just go pawn to e6 as if you want to play the French defense. So you're going to see your opponents going pawn to d4, and this is when you surprise them with a move pawn to d6. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is our main plan. We just want to put our knights on the highlighted squares. The king's knight will sit on g6 and the queen's knight will sit on b6 someday, more like the cow horn formation. Later on, we're going to put our dark squared bishop on e7, and on the other hand, we're going to put our light squared bishop on d7. Anyways, the top played move in the Lichess database is knight to f3, after which you simply go on knight e7. You already know our plan, so they'll go on knight c3, the top played move again. And this is when you go knight d7. Very simple stuff. If bishop d3, the top played move again. If I was you, I would also think of fianchettoing my dark squared bishop and castle shot, and later on play pawn to f5 as my main pawn break. That looks attractive to me, but anyways, keeping everything in the spirit of the cow, we are going to continue with knight g6. Next, we are thinking of going knight b6, given a chance. So they play bishop e3, again the top played move, so I'm not just making up these. After this is when you go knight b6. They are going to castle short, and then you play bishop e7. By the way, you want to start with bishop e7 first before playing bishop d7. Why? Because in some lines, white may rush out with pawn to h4. Not here, but before they castle short, they like playing pawn to h4, just trying to disturb your knight. So just go bishop e7, over controlling the h4 square. If queen d2, yeah, probably they just want to connect their rooks, complete their development. This is when you can castle short if you want, but nobody is holding your neck. Just finish your cow formation. So once again, this is what we call the cow opening, ladies and gentlemen, where we put our knights on g6 and b6 and develop our bishops along the 7th rank, provided that your center pawns are on the 6th rank. Anyway, white may play something like pawn to e5 or rook a d1. By the way, if pawn to e5, you can always go bishop c6 if you want, or pawn to d5, or even exchanging pawns right away. For example, if you take and then they take, you can simply go bishop c6, and this position, according to Stockfish, is very much equal, if not black having an advantage. So once again, move order does matter in the cow opening because of how passive it is. Anyways, instead of pawn to e5, white may play rook a d1. Now that you have a chance to secure your king, this is when you can castle short. If pawn to e5, you can take this pawn, or even better, just go pawn to d5 to avoid any unnecessary trades. You want to look for pawn breaks, and your main savior in this situation is pawn to c5, which you can play anytime you feel like. After you play rook c8, obviously, your queen will sit on c7 in most of these e4 lines. So this is how simple this stuff can be. But going back a few moves, somewhere back on move 3, after white plays knight to f3, and then you go knight e7, some of your white opponents will try to pin this knight as early as they can, stopping you from creating your cow horn formation. So in this case, you might see them playing bishop g5, pinning your knight to the queen. So in this case, you just continue with your main plan. Anyways, knight d7, they play knight c3. And now look at this, ladies and gentlemen. Whenever you think you are oppressed, your position is cramped, you have no better continuation, think of your opponent's most active pieces that are giving you pressure. Those are the pieces you want to get rid of first before doing anything else. So this is my territory. I want to get rid of this useless bishop. It's the most active piece for white. So how do I do this? Pawn to h6. Let them go back. Yeah, still I would love to develop my king's knight on g6, but I can't because I'm gonna lose my queen and probably my teeth. So g5 in this case is not much of a stretch. you haven't yet castled short, so you don't have a weakness. If they play bishop g3, that's when you go knight g6. Next, you are going to consider playing knight b6, develop your light squared bishop, maybe change some things according to the position, like queen e7 and bishop g7, then castle long. h4 may come, by the way. First of all, you have an option to go bishop e7 if you want to, or bishop g7 so that you simplify things from the king side, or even pawn to g4. But if I were you, I would just go ahead and keep things simple. KISS, keep it so simple. Just take, let them take, bishop takes, then bishop e7. You just exchange everything. See how the position has been simplified on the king side, so you have nothing to worry about. Oh, Casper, but white can play queen d2. I know, but you can just go pawn to h5. No problems. No, there is. Ha! h4. Oh, you win. Yeah, I know, right? Cause after white castles long, this is when I can go knight b6, continuing with my plan. So you can see this is when we have played this knight b6 move later in the middle game. Why? Because we were attending to the problems on the king side first. That's how you play chess. You only want to complete your setup once the dust settles. You just don't want to be playing by memorization. Anyways, pawn to f4 may be played. Just go pawn to f5, blocking that pawn. You don't want to allow white to attack your knight. Bishop e2, you go bishop d7, pawn to b3. This is when you castle long, and I consider this to be good for black. Anyway, so this should be enough for e4 lovers or against the e4 line. Now it is time to look at what to do against d4 players using our genetically modified cow opening. d4, again you go e6, starting with a howish defense, and most d4 players love playing pawn to c4 against e6, but this is when you go pawn to d6. They don't know what you are up to, but once again you just want to put your king's knight on g6 and your queen's knight on b6, hence achieving your cow opening formation like a real cowboy. By the way, this has also been played by grandmasters and other strong players. For example, Mokre Karel, please pardon me for the pronunciation, but this guy played this defense against Alexandra Krishuk and he lost terribly. Anyway, knight c3 is the top played move. Now once again, you want to start with the king's knight first before playing your queen's knight. So you go knight e7. Again, the top played move is pawn to e4, because this time white just wants to, take up all the center since you are being passive. But hey, you don't care. You just go knight d7 again. You want to play your cow opening. Let's say knight f3. I would really love to play pawn to g6, fianchetto my dark squared bishop and castle short once again, because pawn to f5 always comes into the picture as a very important pawn break. But sticking to Anna Cramling's ideology, we just go knight g6, of course playing as a cowboy. Anyway, bishop d3. Once again, because of the possible pawn to h4 which may be played by white, we want to start with bishop e7 even before playing knight b6. Maybe that's an additional point that I can add. So just start with bishop e7 before playing knight b6. You want to play knight b6 anyways, but this ensures that the h4 square is over controlled, so there is no pawn to h4. That's why the top played move here is castle short. What else can white do? And now this is when you go knight b6. They'll play bishop e3, again the top played move. I don't want to waste your time. Bishop d7. Once again, welcome back to the cow opening formation where we drink free milk and free powdered milk. Queen d2, castle short. Where are your pawn breaks? Well, it is pawn to c5 and pawn to f5. You're going to play this later on, but you only want to play pawn to c5 after playing rook c8. Anyways, sometimes when you see pawn to c5, just retreat your knight back to c8. There's a difference. Or you first of all take, and then after they take, that's when you retreat. By doing so, you now have a better square for your light squared bishop. Anyways, that was just an option. If they play pawn to e5 instead of pawn to c5, you have all sorts of things that you can do. For example, bishop c6 is okay, or pawn to d5, but if I were you, I could just take on e5. After pawn takes, I go bishop c6 and all my problems are over. Anyways, let's go back a few moves and see what else white can do against our cow opening or our cow defense. So back on move 4, after we play knight d7 and white plays knight to f3, then knight g6. We saw that the top played move in this position is bishop d3. Now what if white rushes out with pawn to h4 immediately before you play bishop e7, which over controls the h4 square? Well, whenever you see this very late, it's high time you stop that pawn, and now that pawn is not going anywhere if bishop g5 is played. I mean, this is self-explanatory, right? Bishop e7, queen d2. Then what else can you do here? Since the dust has settled, this is when you want to continue with your main plans. Knight b6, castle long. And again, in these kinds of openings, when your opponent rushes out with castle long, you don't want to castle short later because of the possible kingside pawn storm which may come. So just keep your king on the center of the board, or find the right time to castle long as well. For example, you can go bishop d7 first. If pawn to c5 is played, you have knight a4. By the way, you're just 2 moves away from castling long. So on the next move, you can just simplify the game as follows. You develop your queen and then castle long. So now your king is very safe. If pawn to f5, you don't have to take. You can just retreat your knight. If they take with their pawn, you are going to take back with your knight and your bishop. If rook hf1, I mean, look for your opponent's most active pieces which are in your territory. You don't want to entertain that. So you can go knight h7 for example, or even better, pawn to f6. Chase that knight away. And now you have less problems to worry about. You can go pawn to e5, trying to gain some more central space. If they take, you take with your d pawn. If knight d5 for some reason, again, you don't want to entertain your enemy's pieces in your territory. So you just exchange knights and put your king to safety completely. You guys, this is very simple to play. And if you are a complete beginner or someone who wants to avoid tons of theory, I suggest that you become a cowboy for the time being. I suggest that you play the cow opening as an alternative defense against everything that white can play. Anyways, let's move on to the c4 line and the f4 line. So far, we've looked at what to do against e4 and d4. Now it is time to look at c4, the English opening. Once again, you just go pawn to e6. If knight c3, you know our plan, but English players always go pawn to g3 because they want to fianchetto their light squared bishop and continue playing their English plans. This is called the Agincourt defense, by the way. I covered this beautiful line in my English opening course. You can check it out at www.kasperchess.com and your eyeballs will be very happy. In fact, I recommend that you get my English opening course. I dished out so many ideas that you will find useful in real tournaments when you're playing the English opening. Anyways, if I was black here, I would really love to play pawn to c5, then go knight c6 in the near future, and we're just playing normally, but keeping everything in the spirit of the cow. Again, we can just go knight e7. If bishop g2 comes, because of this bishop g2, we want to keep an eye on the b7 pawn, you guys. Beware of bishop takes b7 whenever you want to play bishop d7. I mean, if you just rush out with bishop d7, you're going to lose your rook. This is very bad. So be careful with the English opening. But anyways, you can just continue with knight d7, sticking to our plans, right? So pawn to e3 may be played, the top played move, and now you go knight g6. Continuing with our main plans, let's say they go knight ge2, the top played move. This is when you can go knight b6. I mean, both of you are playing non-committal moves, so that's why you have all the time to complete your setup first. There are no threats, as you can see, so castle short is what they do. Now you go bishop e7, simple stuffs, pawn to d4. Just like I said, you still want to be very careful even when you're playing this cow opening stuff, because if you rush out with something like knight takes c4, there is queen a4 check and you're going to lose your knight. So you still want to make sure that you know what you're doing. So you go bishop d7, but that allows bishop takes b7 thanks to this free pawn, because we can simply go rook b8 attacking the bishop, and after bishop g2 we now take that free pawn on c4, just like that. So our last line is pawn to f4. This is gonna be very short. So after pawn to f4, the bird opening, by the way, you can still go e6. Again, they play knight to f3. You can see that's the top played move. So you go pawn to d6. You already know the idea. They go pawn to e3 or pawn to e4. It doesn't matter. You can just go knight e7 again, pawn to d4. So they want to take up all the center with their pawns, right? So you go knight d7, just playing your stuff. If pawn to c4, yeah, once again, I would really love to fianchetto my dark squared bishop on g7 and castle short after playing pawn to g6. But again, we just go knight g6. If pawn to f5 for some reason. We have knight h4 and, exchange knights. If knight c3, would really love to play knight b6 once again, but because of the possible pawn to h4, we want to start with bishop e7. This is an addition, by the way, to what Anna Cramling suggested. So bishop d3 may be played, and now this is when you go knight b6. They may castle short. Now you go bishop d7. Once again, we are back to our cow horn formation. If pawn to f5 comes, by the way, I said you always have knight h4. You're going to trade off your knights and simplify the game. If f takes e6, you're going to take back with your line squared bishop. If queen g4 attacking your g7 pawn, you can just retreat your bishop. Well defended. If bishop e3, this is when you castle short, and I wouldn't mind opening up the board or just play pawn to e5. This is just how flexible this opening can be. Pawn breaks are the owners of the game, ladies and gentlemen. So this is all for today, you guys. Let me know what you think about this opening. Once again, you can check out my courses at www.kasperchess.com, and you can also follow me on Patreon, where I post long form videos that I can't post on YouTube due to people's low attention span. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. Until next time, bye bye.